Today, I discuss the good and the bad of the Equalizer 2.
Is he Star Trek? Very good. Call 911.
Welcome to Cluster Reel. I'm your host, Chris. And of course, there is a spoiler warning in effect. What does a man have to lose when he's lost everything? Equalizer 2, released in 2018 and directed by Antoine Fuqua. It stars Denzel Washington in his second outing as Robert McCall, the Equalizer. Picking up what seems to be a few years after the events of the first film, we open to him on a train dressed in a certain rabbi outfit. And he is on this train trying to rescue a girl who had been kidnapped. Well, later in the film, once the girl is actually rescued, we find out that it was actually the daughter of the bookkeeper of the bookstore that Robert frequents. So then after the opening scene with the train and him beating up the bad guys, we start to figure out where he's been since the last time we saw him. After the train sequence, we start to figure out where he has been since the last few years. He is now no longer working at the Home Mart, and he is now a Lyft driver, and he uses that as an outlet to help people. He picks up people and he sees wrongdoing, he will go and he will try to resolve it. This leads him to picking up a woman who has been heavily drugged and obviously a victim of some misconduct. So he ends up going to the people who took the girl into his car, and he ends up asking them what her name is, just because the sheer fact of what they did to her, it warrants at least knowing her name, I guess. So he decides to make an example out of them. He also, he beats them up and then still gets a 5-star review on his Lyft ride. So his friend Susan, who was in the first film, basically frequents Robert's house because he wants to check in on him, wants to make sure that he's all right, because you can genuinely see that Susan cares for Robert. It's like leading into like what's going to be happening later. So Susan ends up telling Robert that she has went back to work. She is now working with the government again. And this introduces Pedro Pascal's character, Dave. My one gripe about Pedro Pascal's character is that they made it too damn obvious what's going to happen at the end. I'm going to get to that in a bit, because that's coming up. So we found out Dave is actually Robert's old partner, and then he believed that Robert had been killed 7 years ago. Let me just say it. Dave is a bad guy. It's so plainly obvious that he is a bad guy. It's like anyone who has ever watched a movie ever knows that Dave is going to be the bad guy. And the fact that they made Pedro Pascal a bad guy, it's so hard to wrap my head around, but he does it very, very well. So then, Dave and Susan end up on an assignment where they are investigating a murder. So then, when they come back to the hotel that they were staying at after investigating the murder scene, Susan ends up getting jumped and then brutally murdered at the end of it. So this leaves you with Robert losing one of his good friends, one of the only people he had left in his life. So now he is determined to find out who killed Susan. He finds out that the killers knew exactly what hotel room she was staying at and knew exactly how to commandeer her. So Robert ends up finding out that Dave was with her that night too. And then he finds out that the killers knew what floor she was on because they pressed a button before she even had a chance to. So they knew what room she was in to begin with. And how would they know that? Dave! Yeah, Dave told them guys where to find her and where to jump her. And then he ends up coming through, finishing the job. Really obvious that Dave was going to be a bad guy. I mean, fuck. So then Robert confronts Dave about it. And then Dave ends up telling Robert that he has been abandoned by the government. That he was trained to be a killer. Him and a couple other Goonies that apparently Denzel's character had trained with. And just leads into they are doing this for money now, that it's not like anything personal, that they're just killing because there's a paycheck involved with it. So Robert is at Dave's house confronting him about all of this, and then the other Goonies that Robert had trained with come in and they say that they're going to kill him. You don't tell the Equalizer that you're going to kill him, because this is exactly what's going to happen.
I'm gonna kill each and every one of you.
So at the beginning of the movie, Denzel ended up befriending a kid named Miles. He was a troubled kid who had been brushed up in some gang violence and wanted to be a part of one. So he becomes like this father figure to Miles again, just like how he was a father figure to Alina in the last movie. This time, they use Miles as leverage against him. So Dave ends up kidnapping Miles. Robert ends up going to where his home is. It's a beach town that's actually being hit by a hurricane, given a little bit higher stakes for the final battle that's coming. So when Dave and his other Goonies come into that town, they end up splitting up, which is the worst possible thing goons should do in a damn movie. Dave, he's supposed to be played out to be the big bad of this movie. He is the big bad of this movie. And you know what he does? He goes and perches up in a crow's nest. Like, he needed the high ground like Obi-Wan.
It's over! Robert. I have the high ground! You underestimate my power!
Then Denzel ends up freaking cutting them off one by one. I mean, it was like the worst thing that the goons could have done is split up. But he kills them off one at a time because that's just easier that way. And the one thing that I have to say is that I like the final battle in the first movie a lot better than this one, because I don't know, it just seemed like he was very resourceful with the things that were around him. With this, he kind of just used like guns and knives and like a little bit of stuff with like bakery powder or flour or whatever. And it's just not as inventive as how he killed them in the first movie at Home Mart. He was using everything except a gun to kill these guys. Now he's using knives, guns, harpoon guns, whatever. It's like basic stuff that you would guess to kill goons like this. Another gripe I have with this is that the final battle feels very, very isolated and alone. Robert ends up not having anyone by his side, when before in the last movie he actually had his friend who was a security guard help him in the final fight. So this time, he is truly by himself. He doesn't even have people to save other than Miles. Miles is the only one in the trunk. And I really wish they could have used him a little bit better. They could have opened the trunk halfway through, and then Miles end up helping Robert at the end, just like how the security guard guy in the first movie helped him in the last movie. So then, there's this final fight between Robert, Dave, Pedro Pascal's character. And it is the quickest fight I had ever seen. Honestly, Robert didn't even kill him, because I think majority of that was the freaking hurricane that was happening behind them. Denzel just played off of that and just decided to use the hurricane to his advantage, and then he offed Pedro Pascal in like a minute maybe. Not a bad movie at all. I actually give this movie an 8 out of 10. It was a very good outing for Denzel's The Equalizer. It's definitely a popcorn movie. It's not something you go into looking at the finer details or get enthralled into the story. It's something that you watch because you know it's going to be an action thrill ride, and Denzel does not disappoint when he delivers on that account. And there's a third movie to this, which I hope sometime I will be able to get to see it, because I have not seen it yet. I would love to see this movie, and I'd love to review it. Please like this video if you enjoyed it. I'm not getting paid for this, so any like will help. There's also a secret to the next movie that I am going to be reviewing next, somewhere hidden in this video. So, please, scavenge away. This has been Cluster Reel. Thank you for watching.